barbarian roots twine. I breathe the wild blood, the ancient design. The shapers of Asgard built towers of stone, but the dirt holds the claim of the marrow and bone. I feed the brood on the flesh of the dead. Soon the sky will be painted with a fog of red. Hear the pack align, hear the iron pine.
The silver wheel will break, the mother's power wakes.
Yarn with the ironwood and iron bar. Yarn with the witches on a shadow throne.
Rise up the claws,
Swallow the sun. The doom of usurpers has just begun. Now, Skull hunts the daylight, Hati hunts the moon. The cage of their order will shatter out soon. I cradle the hunter, I harbor the jaws that answer to nothing but older or laws. The winter is waking, the shadow line draws. No walls of the tyrants can hold back our claws. Yarn with the ironwood and iron bar. Yarn with the witches on her shadow throne. Rise up the claws, swallow the sun. Doom of usurpers has just begun. Now, Takala! Tear them asunder. Tear them asunder. Tear them asunder. Tear them asunder. Tear them asunder.
Good and fair evening, my friends. Welcome back to another beautiful night in the tavern. You will notice something's a little bit different. So, I'm trying to find a way to make it so that your guys' interactions are a little bit more legible, because this over here doesn't work quite as well as I would like it to. This is better, but it needs refining. This is not quite as good as I would like it to be. So I'll be looking at like what about this works and doesn't work for, the next couple of story times, and whatever ends up working nicely we'll keep. Frost, thank you for the 18 months, please. Enjoy your mead of the Morning Star there. I appreciate you, my friend. And the Emeralds laid here with a 10 stream streak. 10 story times in a row. What a legend. Durgo and Hank, welcome back, my friends. So very good to see you. So glad everyone could still come out at this late hour. Tonight is going to be a little bit more... Yeah, for some reason everyone's name is pink, and I don't know why. It shouldn't be that way. But it seems like a lot of people's names are coming out pink. Mine is red. I need something backing this, and I'm not sure exactly how I'm gonna do that. Because it's not terribly legible. I'll see if the lady can design something for it. Because it's better to have it here, I think, because then it stays on, but it just doesn't look very good. I don't like the look of it. Me not coming out at this late hour. Castle, I'll sight the other night, you, me, and the lady. Yeah, fair enough. Even a simple opaque background would work. Yeah. As I don't know that there's anything, because I'm playing around with a couple of different. First off, let's see if we can lower the. No, making it smaller doesn't really work. We could probably do an outline, but the outline doesn't look very good. The outline makes it all fuzzy. No, we don't want that. There's nothing in here directly that will let me put anything behind it. So I'll have to do something else. I'm glad you thought so, Matty. Tyson, hello, hello. The bear is in. Welcome, welcome. Trying out something a little bit new. We'll see if it works. I'm hoping that I can do something where one of the big issues. Sad Clown, hello and good evening. Welcome in. So very glad you could join us. Welcome, welcome. One of the big issues is that you guys most of the time send really long messages. So I would like, because this thing over here, and if you're over on TikTok, you're not seeing what I'm talking about. But this thing here doesn't really function as far as, like, nothing stays up over here. And there's nothing in the settings that'll let me keep this up. So I want something that stays there long enough that people can at least mildly keep up with what's going on in the conversation. I want to see something real quick. And the other thing is, this has Facebook on it, this does not. So that's also another problem. I want to see if TikTok is supposed to show up as well. But I don't think I don't think it's going to happen, honestly. Seems like everything else is functioning okay, though. Alright, well, trial and error. We'll go through it and see what we can do. Okay. Milo, what are you squealing about? Shush. You have food, water, and both your litter boxes are clean. You're just being a whiner. Cut it out. Being loud for no reason. You can. It's the same issue. So I'm looking at a couple of different programs that let me like customize this so that it looks better. Because right now, again, like this is okay, but it doesn't exactly look amazing. It looks all right. I don't know. I wouldn't want it in front of me. I think having it behind me is better. I like it better being in the background like that. It's part of it, Matty. It's part of it. You know, I'm getting old, Bear. I'm getting old. It happens to all of us. Happens to the best of us. Life cycle. Now, an African swallow or a European swallow, Matty? Which we're talking about? Yeah, I don't know. We'll look at this because I thought that because the green is what we usually use, the green is not. It's not nice. I don't like the green. Let's see what we can do. Maybe just have it be white. Yeah, the white does look better. The white is more legible, I think. So we don't need to have it green. I think having it white is fine. Milo, thank you kindly for 20 months subscribed to the tavern. Tips to the tavern keeper always appreciated. Thank you kindly, love. No, it's alright. I'm packing, but I'm here. I appreciate you. That's alright. I don't have the physical book yet for what we're reading tonight. So we're not going to go too deep, because I don't want to go too far in. Because I have the sequel, but I didn't realize when I put this on the list how expensive these books are now. I didn't realize how old they were. But Gordon R. Dixon's books, I guess, didn't have a huge run. So getting them used is it's not terribly difficult, but it is hard to find them. And some of them are incredibly expensive. Like this, the hard copy that I have of this that the lady and I got from a used bookstore on one of our book rescues, I found for $80 online. It was insane. Absolutely insane. But yes, I don't have the first book. The first book is called The Dragon and the George. The sequel book is called The Dragon Knight, and I won't spoil why, because it's kind of a fun story. The Joker, hello my friend, welcome in. It's good to see you. Sorry, I'm having a technical conversation. Can you tell us what your favorite books are? I can. I usually keep them here with me. Actually, I don't have them all here. This series, at least the first 3 books in this series, are one of my favorite fantasy series out there. Shane. I'll avoid saying Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings I think is a cop-out. I think so many people love Lord of the Rings. I deeply, deeply love Tolkien's universe. Let me see. I'll go grab one of my all-time favorite books. Is actually a children's book. I'm gonna go grab it real quick. Oh. The Phantom Toll Booth incoming, yeah, Frost knows. This is one of my all-time favorite, if not my all-time favorite book ever written. I can read this book over and over and over again, and I never get tired of it. The Phantom Toll Booth is by and large, in my opinion and objectively, one of the best books ever written. You can be an adult, you can be a child. Although I presume children nowadays would probably have a little bit of a harder time, since our reading literacy has gone down since the 60s when this was published. But this is absolutely spectacular. Yeah, I went looking for the first book I loved, and that really got me into reading, and even in poor condition was around $80 Australian. Oof. Neko Niji, hello, Neko. You're from over on YouTube. Wait. You were on Twitch as well. Did you? All right. I'm not gonna try and. I try to remember who is on what platforms, and my brain can't keep up with you guys. So it's your first time over on Twitch. Okay, so I must have seen you over in the YouTube portal. Yeah. Twitch is an overall better viewing experience. We do have to run ads over there. Once every hour we run 3 minutes. But in general. Yeah, I know. How about Stranger in a Strange Land? Stranger in a strange land. Hang on. Oh. I I have not read Stranger in a Strange Land since university. I have not read this in 18, or probably 2 decades. Because I did not read this on my own. I read this story during university for one of my courses. Uh, when I was studying literature, one of my electives was sci-fi, science fiction. Uh, the Dragon and the George, yeah, it's up here. I always put the title of whatever we're reading up here above me so that you guys can find the books if you want them. But yeah, this, if you've never read The Phantom Tollbooth, it is an incredible read. Yeah, I did find paperbacks on thrift books, Hank. I'm gonna try and get a hard copy, and they have a couple for like $12, and I'm gonna get those shipped over. You know, I liked Sam Neill in Jurassic Park, though I think my favorite movie he was in was Bicentennial Man. I can agree with that, Calamitous. Sam Neill was a great actor, and one of the few like really prominent Kiwi actors, because he's from New Zealand, isn't he? Social content and so much more, religion and so much more. I do my best to cover all of the bases, Shane. I like to get around the world and tell you guys about things, and to have other people share their stories with us as well. Another book I really like is this. This isn't actually a book; it's an encyclopedia, but this is one of my favorite reference books for stories, because this guy put together a really comprehensive book on different histories and mythologies and folklores surrounding both continental and island Celts. So I like the Elements Encyclopedia of the Celts too. Obviously, Aragon is a great book. There's a really wonderful book that was around the Magic the Gathering series, written by Jess LeBeau, which was called The Brothers' War, I think. And that's a super vague, like no one's gonna remember that. But yeah, I love that book. Yes, he was a Kiwi. He spent a lot of his life in Australia and involved in many Australia productions. That is true. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff about the Picts in here, Shane. I actually have some stories coming out about the Picts very soon. Molly Sue, hello. I went by stories, I mean stories that you guys will all get to see, the short stories that I put out every day. He did also play Merlin, yes. Sam Neill was an absolute legend. And he got onto TikTok a little while back, and I mentioned this in my homage to him. He got onto TikTok in like 2023, and his TikTok is absolutely unhinged. Like, it is one of the most unhinged social media profiles that I have ever witnessed that wasn't doing it for marketing purposes. Now, later on, like in his last like 80 posts or so, there's a bunch of videos where he's promoting work that he's doing, which is, it's what you have social media for, to promote work. Molly Sue, I don't know if I said hello, but yeah, hello. I in my brain I said hello, but I don't know if I said it out loud. But yeah, his TikTok is delightfully unhinged. If you've never been on to Sam Neill's TikTok page, then I strongly recommend it. Okay, friends, we are reading The Dragon and the George tonight. I don't have my physical copy yet. We're gonna try and get a hardcover from thrift books because it's the only place that really has them at an affordable price. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But tonight I have the ebook version of it by Simon and Schuster, who is the publisher. So we'll read from that just for tonight. We'll probably only do one chapter, just because I don't want to get too deep into it. Well, actually, his chapters aren't very long. Now that I think about it, yeah, we'll read a little bit. We'll see how it goes. We'll read a little bit. We'll see how it goes. Before we get started, we need to run ads for our Twitch friends because they love them so much. We're going to run 3 minutes of ads over on Twitch. When those 3 minutes of ads are done, we'll have 60 minutes without them, and we'll get started with tonight's story time. So I'll thank you all for being patient and sitting through that for us, and we will be back presently. Yeah, it's. I was looking through Sam Neill's discography, actually, not discography, but his filmography, and all the things he's been in, and the man was a prolific actor and writer and a great many other things. But his great pride, I would say, were his little farm and his winery. He had a little winery out in, I think, in Australia, and just an absolutely interesting man. And it is tragic that he passed away, but he was in his 70s, which is not old, but that's about the time most of us gentlemen go. We go sometime between our 70s and 90s is usually when we gentlemen pass away. Have I read the Farseer books? I don't. It doesn't bring anything to mind. Oh, by Robin Hobb. Yes, I've read The Assassin's Apprentice. Ages ago. Probably maybe back in the 90s. I don't know when these came out, but probably back in the 90s. He was nearly 79, only like 2 months. Oof. So, Castle, I'm fixing my story's currency. I call them crystal, but would the smaller denominations be okay to call shards? How do you throw me to ads when I can't afford a sub? 5 to 7 days. Sorry, buddy. I just popped them up. Yeah, there are so many good books out there. A lot of them are older. There haven't been a lot of good books written in the last 15 years, at least in my opinion. But they're all sorry, the lady was messaging me. Joseph, hello. Saw your vid on second site or two sites. Yeah, they in Scotland and Ireland they would call it second sight or true sight. A lot of times just calling it the sight. And what it is the ability to see that which rests just slightly beyond the veil. Yeah, the Dresden files gets brought up all the time. It is blank. Am I the only few watching on YouTube? You know, it is odd for some reason. The YouTube lives there are like 3 or 4 folk who drop in and who hang out, and for the most part that's it. The only other place that we get a good number of folk who come in is the Facebook portal and the Twitch portal. It used to be that TikTok was the big one. Like back when we were doing lore story times. This would have been back in maybe 2022, so maybe 3 years ago. You know, there would be 100 to 300 people in there, and well, the Joseph, the site that I'm talking about in that one video is tied specifically to Scottish and Irish bloodlines and is usually tied to the land as well. There are other forms of what people call second sight from around the world. Those are usually specifically tied to the Celtic, Scottish, and Celtic Irish traditions. Yeah, the OBS updated, so now I have to go through and adjust the settings again. I love your channel and stories. Have you ever checked out any of the Church Fathers or Celestial Hierarchies by Saint Diogenes? They were parts of the reason why I got so interested in Orthodoxy. It's a good question. I've read a lot of the works of the Church Fathers. This celestial hierarchies, perhaps. It doesn't come immediately into my mind. Yeah, Joseph, generally that specific ability is tied to like the old families in the land. And at least as far as my grandfather is concerned, it just doesn't show up in bloodlines anymore. And a lot of people claim to have it, and I'm not one to tell people whether they do or don't. But from what I've ever seen, from what is, and that's not to say that people don't have other intuitions, but that specific thing, my grandfather keeps pretty close track for Irish bloodlines in any case. And I've never seen anybody be able to provide proof that they have that sort of, what the hell is going on here? Sort of ability. I don't know what this is. But yeah, Blank, I've read the works of the early church fathers, which is kind of important when you're studying the Bible and the church. You really should talks about angelology. Oh, I see. I might have it. I read so many books to do. First of all, just because my when I went to university, literature and mythology and history were what I went for. Didn't finish my degree, so I'm not. There's nothing impressive there. But I was in university for 10 years, so I have a massive collection of historical and academic books. If you want to do an experiment, I'm game. Well, if ever you see something that falls into that realm, you can just send me a message saying that you saw the thing, and then if it happens, then you have the proof there that you have it. Any recommendations for those of us who want to research on Norse heritage? Fantasy stuff, not the Eddas. There is not a lot. There is not a lot in regards to what is available, because the Eddas are pretty much the bulk of what is available for Norse mythology and history, unless you go to local customs. A lot of the Norse culture is survived in local oral traditions, and even then there's not a lot of that. Because a lot of the families in the areas that kept those stories died out between like the 20s and 90s. The tradition just fell away. And there's just not a lot left. Like my grandfather's family has a very rich tradition of oral story keeping, but even the stories that we keep are not the same as what you would see in the general population. Like my grandfather's family has a massive store of collected folk tales and mythologies and histories and anecdotal stories that have been collected over like 80 generations or more. I was experimenting with an older story I wrote and found out it works better in first person. Speaking of Norse myths, the antagonist in that story is named Fafnir. Songbird, hello, thank you kindly for the heart me that got popular on the tavern gifts. I appreciate you. Tips to the tavern keeper always appreciated. What got you interested in mythology and all the story stuff you do? To be perfectly honest, I was raised with it. Oh, you think about new fantasy? Oh, I have a hard time recommending anything new fantasy. There is a series, hang on. There is a series that I've had my eye on, I haven't had a chance to read. Trying to remember. Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. Is supposedly very good. I have not read it, but the lady and I have had our eye on it for a while because there's very few things that are written inspired by Norse and Celtic myth that are in fact any good. Blank SEA, is that like, you mean Seattle? Or where do you mean by SCA? We have a few folks that are from Washington. I recommend Akatar, JK. I can't make it past chapter 1. Akatar is rough. Songbird, thank you so much. It's good to see you. Oh, Southeast Asia. Okay, all right. That might be. Where, if you don't mind my asking, where in Southeast Asia are you from? That's one thing I can agree with you, Encrypted, on. I understand why people liked Akatar, or A Court of Thorns and Roses. I understand why people like it. I'm inlands far from everybody. All right. Keep your secrets then, wizard. No trouble, Shane, no trouble, yeah. I've not read it, so I don't know if it's any good, but it gets very good reviews, and I like what they've done with like the art design and all of that. So I have hopes that it's good, but I have myself not read it yet. Petra, hello. Yeah, see, Songbirds up in Washington. No, but what blank meant was Southeast Asia. I've never heard Southeast Asia called SEA, so I was very confused. Where do you live? On the planet? That's not specific. Exactly. Blank out here being an international person of mysteries. But yeah, I grew up with storytelling. My grandfather's family has a tradition of storytelling. We actually raise the children in our family to keep and pass along our tradition of storytelling, our traditions of festival, and our traditions of recording and passing along stories. So that's where I got it from. I had a falling out with my grandfather in my teens. When I came to live in the United States, he and I had a falling out, and I didn't really get back very much interested in the traditions of my family again and upholding the traditions of my family until 6 years ago, about 6-7 years ago. And a lot of it has to do with the lady of the tavern. She's been a big encourager of, one, because I've been a storyteller my whole life. I've written books. I've never published any books, but I've written books. and she's been a big advocate of me, one, getting back into my family traditions, and two, telling stories that I write. So it's her you all have to thank, or her you have to blame for me doing what I do, because if she were not insistent upon it, I probably would not. Milo, come here. I can't trick him into coming over here. Oh, you know what? I might actually be able to trick him into coming over here. Milo. Milo. Dummy. Stupid. Come here. Hey. Come on. Come get it. Come get it. Come on. Hey, come on. Get a bear. Snatched him. There you go. All right. Look, you gotta work. Maddie cashed in to see the kitty, so you're the only kitty nearby, and I don't want to stand up. I'm being lazy. So here he is. Ugh. There is Milo. The little putty tat. Oh, his head was gone. There he is. He's not little. He's an absolute unit. He's massive. Hey. 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 Relax. Relax. You're fine. You're fine. He's being such a whiner. Mysterious person I am indeed. Since you're very fond of oral traditions and passing on stories, do you realize there's a lot of similarities between them, like a flood? Oh yes, yes. The world has incredible crossovers in the stories that we tell. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a series this next week. What's funny is that him and Boo like to drink out of these bottles. So if you open one of these bottles and you are sitting down, they will come rushing from anywhere to try and get some out of it. Because they're weird. I don't know why they like drinking out of water bottles. They're strange little creatures. But yeah, blank, there are every major mythos in the world shares commonality with every other mythos in the world. It is strange. Who needs brains when you're that pretty? Certainly not him, that's for sure. Even if he had brains, I'm convinced he wouldn't use them. Have you read the David Eddings series? Two different storylines that are kind of the same. Maybe. David Eddings sounds more familiar. No, I have not read these. My father had paperbacks of these when I was a young man, and I probably still have the paperbacks somewhere. I might have read Magician's Gambit. Magician's Gambit sounds familiar. I might have read Castle of Wizardry as well. And I might have read Seeress of Kell. But when I was a young man, especially when I came back to the United States, I spent a lot of time in libraries just reading books. Goodreads, Sparhawk is a beast. I'll add it to my list of things to read. What is your worldview like? Do you think all these mythologies are simultaneously true, or do you think there are bits and pieces of them that fit a larger puzzle? Did you ever try to read Mission Earth at all? I don't think so. I don't think so, Columbus. Oh, these are Ron Hubbard's books. The covers look familiar, but again, I read so many books in like the late 90s, early 2000s that were from like the 70s and 80s that I don't remember all of them. I might have read some of these. Some of the covers look familiar to me, but I couldn't tell you what any of them were about. So my general understanding of stories is that most mythologies tend to contain grains of truth that are representative of a greater truth behind them. I don't think that their Edding series start with Pawn of the Prophecy. I can't say that I remember this series well enough to be able to tell you what it was about, but I recognize the books. Smaller Mantis, hello. Darth Nexus, hello, my friend. Thank you for the hi, bear. I appreciate that. Tips to the Tavern Keeper, always appreciated. And one of the things that it bothers me greatly is that a lot of people like to take mythology either as purely fictional or purely true, and usually it's neither. Usually mythologies, like take for instance Robin Hood. Like Robin Hood is a culmination of stories of many men that come together to bear the weight of the story of Robin Hood. It's the same thing with King Arthur. Like we know at least with some level of certainty that there was a king who was probably the King Arthur. But we don't necessarily know that all of the stories that are attributed to King Arthur necessarily are about the King Arthur, if that makes sense. It's the same with different heroes, right? Like Odysseus is not a historical figure, but Odysseus is the conglomeration of the warrior spirit of the Greek people that was then confounded and compiled into the story of Odysseus. And Odysseus himself is probably based off of a real figure who then bore the weight of those stories. Pawn is David Eddings. I enjoy Eddings. It's quite light as far as fantasy goes. What an ex of mine referred to as bubblegum fantasy. That's funny. I've not heard of that. Yeah, something like archetypes, but in real life practice. So, like for instance, probably the nearest one that we have to us is that's really popular right now would be Ragnar Lothbrok, right? Ragnar Lothbrok is a real historical figure, but his saga is obviously not a full truth as far as what his life was. There is a certain level of folklore and mythology that is behind his story. And again, it is a conglomeration of these things. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because they were all simultaneously true, they would contradict. I think that a lot of mythologies or stories have grains of truth, although I believe Christianity is true. I think that Christianity has the most credence for a lot of the things that we see in description. I don't think that the Bible covers everything. I do believe the Bible is a very exhaustive book. And a lot of people like to crap on the Bible. But the Bible itself is one of the most rigorously examined and critiqued and gone after books in all of history. And it is largely a history book. It does have poetry, it does have euphemism, it does have metaphor, and it does have some mythology in it because there are stories within the Bible that cannot be proven. Things like the creation poem, the creation story, and Noah's Ark. Like, these are stories that cannot be proven because it's so long ago, there's just no substantial proof for them. But yeah, the Bible is a substantial document. There's no getting around it. Even if you don't want to believe in the mystical things about it, even if you don't want to believe in the more fantastic things about the Bible is one of the most rigorous historical documents that has ever been put together, and it is one of the most miraculous pieces of work that's ever been put together. what is it, 68 authors over a course of 3,000 years that put it together, and there's no contradictions, no substantial contradictions. It's an insane piece of work. The problem I have with bubblegum anything is that after 15 minutes, your jaw is sore and it's lost all flavor. Fair enough, Claudius. All stories are us. The stories might be a little different, but the story is all about the same people, us. Yeah. And that's one of the important things to remember, is that generally speaking, like, a lot of people like to look at different stories and go, well, oh, that was propagandized by this group or this group. Like, one of the examples that I use is the Greeks, right? You have all of these different Greek factions that pretty much all hated each other. And a lot of people will use the phrase, history is written by the winners, right? Like, the victors get to decide what history gets written. Nate, my friend, good to see you. Thank you for the heart me over on TikTok. I appreciate you for that. But when you look at a lot of Greek history, most of it is not written by the winners amongst the Greeks. Like, for instance, the story of Sparta, right? The story of Sparta was not written by Spartan scholars. It was written by Athenian scholars. Even after Sparta crushed Athens, the Athenian scholars were still the ones who were writing the stories of Sparta. So the reason why we look at Sparta as being a bunch of meathead, muscle-bound morons is because that's what Athens wrote about them. Like, sure, they acknowledge their tactical and their strategical superiority. They acknowledge that they were strong fighters. But there's a lot of not flattering things. That some of it might be true. Some of it might be because Athens scholars were salty about having their Athenian democracy permanently dismantled, you know? Could be any number of those things. The meatheads that kicked our butts, right? Right. Just curious, if I have an antagonist named after Fafnir, would it still be okay to add a character named after Sigurd? And I don't mean the protag, since I have a different name for her. I guess it depends on how close you're following the story. It's always a bit of a line. So if you take historical figures and then you race or you culture or you gender swap them, you're always going to get people who push back against it. Nobody likes being a helot. This is Sparta. Looking forward to the new Odyssey movie. Great actors. There are quite a few good actors in the new Odyssey movie. I don't like Christopher Nolan films, and I know that's a bit of a hot take. Christopher Nolan's films are dark and broody and gritty, and the Odyssey, while it is sort of a dreary story, I don't know, I just don't like Christopher Nolan's films. Like, he has a couple that I'll admit are good. It's something about the tone of his films I just don't care for. It's also odd to me that they didn't cast any Greek folk in the Odyssey. Like, it's the biggest, most expensive production ever done around the Odyssey, and there are no Greek actors in it. They didn't film any of it in Greece. And they didn't film... Actually, I don't know. They might have filmed some of it in Greece, because the Greek government did pay them to do it. And then the fact that they used a Viking ship for Odysseus' ship is also odd to me. So I don't know. I may end up watching it. I don't know. I don't really watch movies all that much anymore. I've been worn out by Hollywood. Hollywood has beat me down. But I might. A lot of folk are saying it's good. Some people are saying it's boring. It does have a lot of really good actors. We'll have to see what happens. Well, they have a gigantic functional Greek galleon that they could have used, and they used the world's largest Viking ship, which is just such a weird choice to me. Such a strange choice. I'm not gender swapping. I'm saying I can have a character named Sigurd on the side or supporting a character. Well, that's what I mean. Is like, if you're changing the hero who does the thing, you always have to be careful, because it's a very popular thing in modern media to say the old hero didn't do this thing, my hero did this thing. There was a writer who did essentially a God of War style story, where it's a female Viking who goes and kills all the Norse gods. And it just comes off as weird. They should have used a trireme. New Odyssey movie, and see, I've gotten mixed messages about it. Like, some folk really liked it. Some folks said that it was kind of messy and boring. I would say the two things that have really like got my goat about it is the Viking ship and the usage of modern colloquial English. Like, if you're gonna go that big and you're gonna go that above to make it like a fantastical period piece, at least like try to have good accents in the film. I don't know, and again, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm being picky, and maybe I'm trying to find a reason not to watch a Christopher Nolan film because I don't like his movies. Good, bad, or indifferent, I refuse to support a group of people until they pulled their heads out of their butts, which is never going to happen with Hollywood. All of Hollywood has their heads permanently inserted into their own rectums. It's never going to change. Just for instance, there's a YouTuber named Markiplier who made a horror film called Iron Lung. And it's based on a video game. So many Hollywood studios and distributors worked very hard to make sure he could not get that film into theaters. And then when they finally did get it into theaters, they worked very hard to convince him not to do it in more than like 10 or 15 theaters. And it ended up being... No, I mean, like, they could have done Greek accents, is what I mean. I don't think that everything needs to be English. I don't think everything needs to... Like, I understand why films tend to default to, like, the Queen's English accent. Because it has sort of a gravitas to it. It's got a history to it. But modern English in one of the oldest written stories feels so strange to me. And again, maybe I'm just trying to find reasons to complain because I don't like Nolan. Maybe I'm being a bit of a curmudgeon about it. I don't know. Because my wife, she loves Christopher Nolan's Batman. The one film I do like of his, I think it's his, is Interstellar. I liked Interstellar quite a bit. There are some parts of it I didn't care for, but I liked Interstellar. One day it'll be revealed that M. Night Shyamalan was behind current Hollywood, biggest twist of all time. It would be the best twist of his career after Awakening and destroying Avatar: The Last Airbender and all that. If only we could get I would be all in for a Men in Tights version of Odysseus. Unfortunately, what's his name? Mel Brooks doesn't really do films anymore. I think he's doing a sequel to Spaceballs, but he doesn't really do films anymore. He's sort of retired, mostly retired. Yeah, this is something that a lot of people have a problem with. Blank is the race swapping. I've come to expect it from Hollywood. I do think it's odd when they do it, and usually it's got no purpose or point. It seems to me like they just do it for publicity to like stir up people to fight about it online. I just don't expect things from Hollywood. Like, as an Irishman, right? I just don't expect there to be accurate representations of Ireland or Irish people or Irish folklore in Irish things. And, you know, even in James Bond, right? Like, James Bond's probably most famous portrayal, he was played by a Scotsman. You know, Sean Connery is a Scotsman, and he played James Bond, who's famously an Englishman, right? MI6. I think that if you are going to, as I was saying to Maddie, if you're going to like gender swap a character or culture swap a story or race swap a character, there should be some reason in it in your narrative. It shouldn't just be done for sake of being done. But Hollywood, pick your own potatoes, right? But Hollywood doesn't care about these things. Hollywood likes to grandstand about caring, but they don't really care about anything. They care about making money. They care about having a moral high ground. They care about being in control of a narrative, but they don't particularly care about faithful storytelling. They don't even necessarily care about quality storytelling. And you have a few folk that do. You have like Hayao Miyazaki, who is probably one of the greatest animators and producers of our time. If I vanish, there's a thunderstorm coming. That's all right, Matty. Just be safe, brother. I don't expect much from Hollywood anymore, too. Anyways, unfortunately, I have to leave the tavern. I shall come back sometime again. Farewell, travelers. Blank, it was wonderful to see you. We do story time every Tuesday and Thursday with me, and then on Sundays with my wife. So we'll look forward to seeing you back at some time. Have yourself a wonderful night and rest well. Nobody! Hello, good to see you. Welcome in. Now, remember reading a fan fiction of James Bond that suggested that James Bond wasn't a person, he was instead a code name, identity used for the agent that carries the number 007. I've seen that too, and it's kind of a fun notion. And it would be a funner notion, I would say, if we didn't live in the current media climate that we do. Because in the original novels, obviously that's not the case, but it is sort of a fun way to explain away why there have been so many folks who have played him. I just wish that they would do some of the other James Bond novels, because there are a bunch of James Bond novels. Ian Fleming wrote a bunch of books. Yeah, it's far more realistic, but it takes a lot of the 007 out of 007. See, and again, this is another area where a lot of people don't agree with me, and I'll admit that I might be just up to personal preference, but I don't like Daniel Craig's James Bond. Like, a lot of people like Daniel Craig as James Bond. I didn't care for it. I didn't care for Daniel Craig's James Bond. I don't even really like. I like Pierce Brosnan a lot. I like him a lot as an actor, and I do like the movies that he's in. But even Pierce Brosnan is not a particularly good James Bond. Sean Connery, and then what was the other guy? Roger Moore, Sean Connery, and Timothy Dalton, I thought were like the superior James Bonds. But even then, who was in Her Majesty's Royal Navy? Because Her Majesty's Secret Service. Oh, okay, George Lazenby. Okay, that's why I did not like George Lazenby's depiction. Daniel Craig is a terrible James Bond. See, that's how I feel. My wife doesn't agree with me. Una does not agree with me. She likes the Daniel Craig movies. I think she also just likes Daniel Craig. And Daniel Craig's a great actor. He did a fine job. But I like the James Bond, which is usually the game's James Bonds, which is usually a mix of Sean and Daniel Craig. I did not like Timothy Dalton. I don't know. I thought Timothy Dalton's. If we were to put them on a scale, it would go Sean Connery, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton for me, and then it would be. Pierce Brosnan, Daniel Craig, and then Lazenby. It'd be how I would rank them. Una's a woman of grand taste. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. She's a woman of high standard and grand taste. So we're lucky that she lowered her standards for me a bit. All right. I suppose we should read, since I said that's what we were going to do, and then we haven't done it yet. We got about 20 minutes till we have to run ads again. Yeah, coming back to Matty, all I meant when George Lazenby was Australian and he pretty much gave up acting after Bond. He didn't like acting. It's apparent. I didn't know he gave up acting, but it is apparent that he did not like acting. As soon as you said Daniel Craig is her favorite, I'm like, I'm with Una on that. Yeah, he doesn't have the James Bond gravitas. He doesn't have the James Bond look. He's very like quiet and broody, which is not very James Bondy to me. I also don't like when they make James Bond cry. That's weird. It's like seeing your dad cry for the first time. James Bond should not be a crier. Which again was like what happened with Lazenby. He wept as James Bond, and a lot of people. Now, see, my order would be Sean Connery, Daniel Craig, then Roger Moore, then Pierce Brosnan, then Timothy Dalton, and then finally George Lazenby. For the life of me, I cannot understand why people like Daniel Craig as James Bond. And again, I will admit that I am the odd man out on this, because most people like him as James Bond. I don't know why. I can't understand why. I'm just trying to reference the Fafnir myth without a direct retelling, if I'm making sense. Right. Any which way that you do it, you're gonna catch flack by saying the hero that did this in the story is not the hero that does it in my story. Henry Cavill's fists reloading, yeah, the pump. That clip got shared to high hell on the internet after it went through. And admittedly, that's a great scene. The whole dial-up on it, the whole thing, absolutely exceptional. I would have liked to see Clive Owens as Bond. Oh yeah, yeah, I can see that. Clive Owen might have made a pretty good James Bond, actually. Not now. I mean, he's in his 60s now, but I think it's because Daniel Craig portrays Bond in the beginning of his career, so he's raw in the way a guy straight out of the SAS might be. I suppose I can see that. I suppose I can take that as a descriptor. Maybe it's also that I'm burnt out on origin stories, because we've gotten like the start of Superman and the start of Batman and the start of and the start of all of these characters over and over and over and over again, and you can only see the beginning of someone's career so many times before you're praying for the end of it, I guess. Yeah. I mean, Clive Owens is a good actor, though. I liked him in King Arthur. He was really good in King Arthur. I don't know how many people actually like the King Arthur movie, but I like the King Arthur movie. Okay, yeah, I'm going to write out the outline and send it to you and see if I need to change it a bit or not. I'm not trying to please all the people too. Yeah, and I'm not telling you should try to please all the people. I'm just telling you that with the state of modern media, if you take a historical or well-known hero or a mythological and well-known hero, and you give their contribution to somebody else, you'll catch flack for it. You just have to decide whether or not you think that it's powerful enough in your story to be willing to catch the flack for it. And it'll also depend on how popular your book gets. You know, if you're lucky and you're one of the books that ends up being a New York Times bestseller and you sell millions and millions and millions of copies, then you're going to have a lot more criticism levied at what you wrote, which is just the reality of when you do things. And they never really showed the beginning of Bond before Craig. The rest of them were either in the middle or at the end. Yeah, which is sort of how Ian Fleming wrote the books. Like it was never about like how did he become James Bond. Ian Fleming wrote his books as the adventures of James Bond, right? It's for the same reason I don't really like these like young Sherlock Holmes stories, because the young Sherlock Holmes stories sort of break the character of Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes is a fiercely rational, everything has to exist in reality sort of figure, and these young Sherlock Holmes stories feel the need to sort of mythologize him and add sort of an idea of whimsy to Sherlock Holmes, and I just don't think that it's. The closest thing I've seen him play to Bond was Shoot 'Em Up. Shoot 'Em Up was a great movie. Shoot 'Em Up was a wonderful film. I loved Shoot 'Em Up. Having the protag defeat Fafnir, but I want my Sigurd kill Fafnir. Two separate characters are. That's what I'm trying to say, but I get what you mean. Right. Again, you always have to be careful when using historical or mythological characters, because there is a whole history of stuff behind it. Keira Knightley is wonderful in most of the things that she's in. I enjoy Keira Knightley, and gosh, what's the other girl's name? Keira Knightley, and she played Padme, and she was in V for Vendetta. My brain's not working, but those two actresses, I like them in most things that they're in. Clifford, hello, good to see you, welcome in. Natalie Portman, yes, thank you, Matty. Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman, I like them in most things that they're in. I even like the more recent Pride and Prejudice, which the lady loves. It's one of her favorite movies. We'll watch it like 8 or 9 times in a year, sometimes more than that. If I got that wrong, you'd have license to shoot me. Okay, all right. I have waffled for quite a bit. Let's go ahead and read some, my friends. We do have a brand new book that we're starting, so I want to make sure you guys get at least a little bit of it before we head out. Did you see the Natalie Portman rap? As in a rap that was done by Natalie Portman, or a rap about Natalie Portman? Either way, the answer is no, but I am curious as to what you're talking about. Also, sláinte, my friends. It was a skit, like a Saturday Night Live skit. I'll have to look it up afterward. I'll have to look it up later, Hank, because that sounds hilarious to me. With the Lonely Island. Oh, okay, all right, yeah. I might have seen that, Hank, but I'm gonna look it up after we're done here, anyways. They tell your father hello from the tavern, Clifford. As much as I don't like the idea of Jason Statham being James Bond, I would kill to see a James Bond movie with Jason Statham. Jason Statham plays Jason Statham in every movie that he's in. I would love to see James Bond, Jason Statham. Because we've already gotten a couple of films that are kind of like that, like The Transporter is very much like a James Bond-esque film. So I would love to see Jason Statham as James Bond. I don't think it would be a good James Bond movie, but I would still love to see it just on principle. Oh, it was with it. Well, I'd presume so, Hank. I'll look it up after we're done for tonight, because it sounds funny. And all the Lonely Island stuff is very funny. Okay, friends. We are getting in to the world of the Dragon Knight. Starting with book 1, The Dragon and the George, which follows the tale of James Eckert and his wife. Now, this is a little bit different from the normal fantasy that we do. The Dragon Knight is sci-fi fantasy. So it actually starts out science fiction and then goes into fantasy. And interestingly enough, the book itself is kind of an isekai, to use an anime term. It's my time to wander off for the night. Thank you for the Waffles Castle. Brings back a lot of magic that drew me into the tavern in the beginning. We will be well and stay safe, tavern family. Good night, Frost. Rest well, my friend. I'm sorry that I waffled past you being able to hear the first chapter of the book. But we're probably only going to be on for another 45 minutes or so anyways. Maybe not even that. So you go ahead, head off to bed, brother. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate your help. And we'll see you next time. Dragon Riders Apparent is fully sci-fi once you dig in. Though at first Anne McCaffrey stood on that till the day she died, that she was not a fantasy writer, she was a sci-fi writer. Yeah, so Gordon R. Dixon and Ben Bova are like the 80s masters of what I would call video game sci-fi. They are really good. And the Dragon Knight series is sort of an evolution of the Tolkienian fantasy combined with sort of like the Orson Scott Card and Isaac Asimov sci-fi. And that's a lot of what Ben Bova and Gordon R. Dixon did in their careers. And I love their books. I just realized I haven't read this whole series. I've only read up to the 4th or 5th book in it. And there are like 6 books after that I wasn't aware of. Skjord, hello my friend, welcome in, it's good to see you. And they're Americans, so we're not going to have British accents this time. They're going to be American accents. Chapter 1 of The Dragon and the George by Gordon R. Dixon. At 10:30 a.m. sharp, James Eckert pulled up in front of Stoddard Hall on the River Oak College campus, where Grotwald Weinard Hansen had his lab. Angie Farrell was not, however, ready and waiting at the curb. Of course, it was a warm, bright September morning. Jim sat in the car and tried to keep his temper under control. It would not be Angie's fault. That idiot of a Grotwald undoubtedly had dreamed up something to keep her working overtime, in spite of, or perhaps because of, the fact that he knew she and Jim were supposed to be going home hunting this morning. It was hard not to lose his temper with someone like Grotwald, who was not only one of the world's non-prizes, but who had been very patiently trying to take Angie away from Jim and get her for himself. One of the 2 big doors on the front of Stoddard Hall opened and a figure came out, but it was not Angie. It was a stocky young man with bushy red hair and a mustache, carrying an overstuffed briefcase. Seeing Jim in the car, he came down the steps, over to the car and leaned on the edge of the open window on the curb side of the front seat. "Waiting for Angie?" he asked. "That's right, Danny," said Jim. She was supposed to be here. She was supposed to be out here to meet me, but evidently Grotwald is still hanging on to her. That's his style, Danny Kuddock. Danny Kuddock was the teaching assistant of the physics department. He was the only other Class AA volleyball player on campus. You're going out to see Cheryl's trailer. If Angie ever gets loose in time, said Jim. Oh, she'll be on her way any second now. Say, do the two of you want to drop over to my place after we play tomorrow night? Nothing special, just pizza and beer and a few other people from the teams with their wives and so forth. Sounds fine, said Jim glumly. If I'm not stuck in with some extra work for the Shorels. Thanks in any case, though. And we'll certainly be there if we can make it. Right, Danny straightened up. See you tomorrow for the game, then. He went off. Jim returned to his own thoughts. At the same time, he told himself maturity dictated that he should not lose his emotional control over something like this. Even though they only had 2 hours to get to the trailer court and return to have lunch before getting Angie back to a part-time job at Grotwald's lab assistant. He must remember that frustration was a part of life. He had to learn to live with the whole business of selfish department heads, inadequate salaries, and an economy that was pinching River Oak College. Here, like all other educational institutions, to the point where it seemed that about all you could do with a doctorate in medieval history was use your diploma to shine your shoes, before going to apply for a job as a grain shoveler. I dare you to do your California Surfer dude as a character. I mean, okay, if another character pops up, because they're only in our world. I missed the ending of Prince of the Blood. Yes, you did, Clifford. It is up though. If you want to go over to YouTube, it'll be the last episode. Over in the live section on the YouTube channel. If you'd like to mix it up. Okay, Bear, if there is another character that pops up that is not, because Grotwald is German. So, and I don't know, my German accent is terrible. So, luckily we don't have to deal with him for too long. But Grotwald is German, and then the first guy we meet in the next world is French. So, this is going to be a rough one for me. But if he runs into another character, because again, I haven't read this in ages, so if he runs into another character, I'll make him a surfer dude. Let's see. Jim hauled himself up in his thoughts at this point. Having noticed that, far from calming him down, this rehearsing of things to be endured had his fists white-knuckled and beginning to bend the ancient steering wheel of the Gorp. Nothing about the Gorp was strong enough to ignore that kind of treatment. For a 10-year-old Fiat, it was still a faithful little car. But no honest person would call it in good shape. On the other hand, Jim himself, like many Class AA volleyball players, was in shape with a vengeance. He stood a shade under 6 feet, but even professional weight guessers usually underestimated by 20 or more his 210 pounds, which he carried mostly in bone and hard muscle. Unfortunately, that sort of physical engine, matched with an instinct for taking direct action when challenged, which was useful on the volleyball courts with the caliber of opponents Jim had been facing in tournament play for some years now, but not perhaps the best thing socially, gave Jim reason to consider that he had cause for concern about himself. Thank heaven for Angie. The beautiful thing about her was that she could get results from people without becoming at all annoyed with them. In situations when Jim would have sworn that the other persons were deliberately looking for a fight. How she managed it, Jim had never been able to figure out. As far as he could see, all she did was explain matters in a level, friendly voice. Whereupon, for some reason, the other people immediately stopped doing whatever they had been doing that was antagonistic and became friendly and helpful. Angie was rather special, particularly for someone hardly bigger than a minute. Look at the way she handled Grotwald. Jim woke to the fact that time had been sliding away as he'd been sitting there thinking. He looked at his watch and scowled. Nearly 11:15. This was too much. If Grotwald didn't have the sense to let her go, Angie ought to have broken away by this time. He pushed open the car door on his side, and was just getting out when one of two big front doors swung open and Angie came running down the steps to the car, pulling on her light beige topcoat as she ran. Her brown eyes were bright and her cheeks were pink with the hurry. "Oh, there you are," said Jim, getting back in. "I'm sorry." Angie got into the Gorp on her side and slammed the door behind her. "Grotwald's all excited. He thinks he's right on the verge of proving astral projection is possible." Which ejection?" Jim keyed the Gorp to life and pulled away from the curb. "Astral projection. Setting the spirit free to wander outside of the body. What with the results he's been getting using advanced input on biofeedback circuitry to duplicate certain forms of sleep states." "You aren't letting him experiment on you, are you? I thought we got that settled." "Oh, don't get all worked up now," Angie said. "I'm not letting him experiment on me. I'm helping him with his experiments. Don't worry, he's not going to hypnotize me or anything like that." He tried it once. Jim pulled the Gorp out of the college grounds and onto West Street, and turned down the ramp heading towards Highway 5. "He only tried. You were the only one who hypnotized me. If you'll remember, after Grotwald taught you how. Anyway, you're not to let anyone hypnotize you again, me or Hansen or anybody." "Of course," said Angie softly. Then she went, doing it again. There she went, doing it again. Just what he had been thinking about, Jim told himself. Now he was the one she'd just handled. All of a sudden there was no more argument, and he was wondering what he'd got all excited about in the first place. He was also feeling half guilty for making a fuss over something that probably had not been all that important to begin with. "Anyway," he said, heading out along Highway 5 toward the trailer court that Danny Kurdick had told him about. "If this trailer for rent turns out to be the deal Danny said it was, we can get married maybe, live together, and we can get by cheaply enough so that you won't have to work for Grotwald, as well as holding down your apprenticeship in English." "Jim," said Angie, "you know better." We could not. The only reason the co-op can get by charging us $120 apiece per month for food and board is that it makes slop food in quantity and beds us all down in a double-decker bunks and dormitories. Any place we find ourselves is going to put our living costs up, not down. I can't manage meals for as cheaply as the co-op can. No, I can't quit my work with Grotwald. But at least having a place of our own will make it seem worthwhile to go on. We've got to have a place of our own. Let's not fool ourselves about the expenses. We could just sort of camp out in the new place first few months. How could we? To cook and eat, we'd have to have utensils and a table to eat on. We need another table so we can each have one to correct tests on, and so forth for our jobs at the college. And chairs. We need at least a mattress to sleep on, and something like a dresser for clothes that can't be hung up. All right, I'll get an extra job then. No, you won't. I had to stop working on my thesis. You're not going to stick with writing papers for academic journals until you're publishing something. Then see Scholes keep you out of that instructorship. Oh, hell, said Jim. I'll probably never get anything published anyway. You better not mean that. For once, Angie sounded almost angry. Well, Actually, no, Jim said, a little shamefacedly. Actually, this last paper was going pretty well this morning before I headed off for class. Professor Thibault Scholes, head of the history department, liked his assistants to sit in on all of his classes, in addition to doing the usual work of correcting tests, preserving reference books for students in the course, and so forth. It was a neat little whim that added 8 hours a week to time Jim otherwise required to put in to earn his $175 a month. Man, $175 a month. Cindy, hello, good to see you, welcome in. Dave Day, hello, good to see you. Berkey, hello. Do you ever just listen to yourself and enjoy hearing yourself speak? I listen to myself speak so often, Berkey, that at this point, no. I spend so much time listening to myself, I'm just about as tired of my voice as I can get. I think I'm as packed as I can be until the dryer is done and I can put stuff in the car. Progress is always good, Neil. Oh. How was he? Asked Angie. Did you ask him about the instructorship again? He wasn't in the mood. He wasn't, or you weren't. Jim winced internally. Scholes had interviewed Jim at the History Association meeting last year in Chicago, and as good as promised him a recently created instructorship just added to the history department Scholes headed at River Oak. With this prospect, Angie had tried for, and to the happiness of both of them, got a teaching assistantship in the English department. She was still working for her doctorate in English literature. Jim, having been 3 years ahead of her at Michigan State, where they met as graduate students, with both of them set for jobs at the same academic institution, it had looked as if they had their future taped. But then, when they had gotten here, Scholes broke the news that because of the last-minute budget problems, Jim would not be given the instructorship until the spring quarter at the earliest. Meanwhile, Scholes had a teaching assistantship open. It had taken Jim less than a month to find out the real nature of the budget problem. Like academic departments in many colleges and universities, the staff teaching history at River Oak College was riddled with internal politics. Two established factions and departments opposed each other on almost every point. Scholes, independent of both, had gotten by for years by playing them against each other. But an additional instructor added at this time could cause a reshuffling of alliances and the resultant upset in the neat balance of power. On the other hand, Professor Theodore N. Jellamine, the outspoken motorcycle-riding vice-chairman of the department, was thinking of retiring this coming spring. His leaving would mean promotions for those under him, and by controlling these, Scholes would then absorb a new instructor into the fresh balance of power hand-tailored by himself. "I'm sorry, Angie," said Jim contritely. "I had to sit through that class for an hour with nothing to do but look interested and think of what he's done to us. And by the time the bell rang, I didn't dare talk to him for fear I'd put in one of his teeth when he turned me down again." There was a moment of stark silence in the car as they drove along. Then Jim, staring straight ahead out of the windshield, felt his arm squeezed gently. "That's all right," said Angie. If you felt like that, you did the right thing. You'll catch him sometime when you're able to talk calmly about it." They drove on for a little while, longer, without talking. "There it is," said Jim, nodding to the right, off the highway. That is not much pay. Oh, shoot, ad started. Sorry, friends, I didn't realize. Yeah, that is not much pay. I love your voice. It's so soothing. Well, thank you, Cindy. It's always good to see you. I'm glad you were able to drop in tonight. This is the first chapter of this book. We're starting a brand new series. This is one of my favorite series, but I haven't read it in over a decade. So I don't actually remember how good it actually is and how much of it is just nostalgia in my mind. One thing that I am realizing that is going to be frustrating throughout the story is that Dixon really likes his complex sentence structures, which is gonna be an issue because it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for breathing when you're reading out loud. But yet, Clifford, this I believe is taking place either in the 90s or in the 80s. Is when these stories are, for certain, that's when they were written. Yeah, the copyright of the sequel is in 1990. So this book was written in the mid to late 80s. So $175 a month is not a lot, which is obviously why they're living in poverty. But there was, because what was the average monthly in America? The monthly wages in America were roughly $1,000 to $1,500 per month in the 1980s. So yeah, between the two of them, it looks like they're making about $400 a month. Fell asleep listening Tuesday, woke up so confused that I missed so much. Probably going to happen again. Well, we're not doing a whole lot of reading tonight. This was... I don't have the physical book yet. And I had to get home late because there were things going on here at home. Happens to me a lot. But that's okay. That means that you feel comfortable and safe in the tavern to drift off to sleep during story time, and that's perfectly acceptable. Perfectly acceptable. But we're just doing the one chapter tonight anyway, so you don't have to worry about falling asleep. And hopefully I can get a hard copy of this within the next couple of days, so we'll have it for next week. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Again, I did not realize how rare his books were. And the only place that I can find them that are reasonable is thrift books, which we usually get our books through thrift books or World of Books. So we usually get them through one of those places anyways. But I don't remember... Oh man, I didn't realize how quickly he like gets into it. But the next chapter of the book is it's gonna be fast. We're gonna get into almost directly into the meat of the story in chapter 2. It's that voice so soothing. Oh my gosh, my mouth is not working tonight. So soothing. Thank you, Cindy. I honestly, there are a lot of people who find my voice to be grating. So the fact that you all enjoy it and it helps you to be soothed and enjoy your time, I appreciate it. She gets some of her books on eBay. Did you have something pop up that I didn't see, Hank? No. Marissa, hello, love. Long time no see. Glad you could drop in. We're coming up to the end. We're only going to be on for a little bit longer. But I'm glad you could drop in. Hello, hello. But yeah, the next chapter is going to drop us almost immediately in... Yeah, we're going to be almost immediately in to like the fantasy side of the story. It's exciting. It is exciting. We're going to... Let's save this. No. All right. I figured that's usually the case, yes. Good thing you don't lecture, because I would be asleep in your class. You know what's funny? Is I've had some folk, I had a young gentleman actually message me a while back. And he's like, it's weird, when you're reading, I get soothed. But then when you're talking about history, I get excited. He's like, I wish my history teacher had been as good at storytelling as you, because I might have paid attention in history. Oh. I'm glad I'm not the only one to have the night struggles. Well, and I think it's a damn shame how the classroom is structured around history and mythology and whatnot. Because it ends up making it so that a lot of folk end up sort of not getting a good experience around history. Which is sad, because history is fascinating. There are so many incredible stories in history, and so many incredible people, and really there's just like this overhang of dread and droll over history and mythology and folklore that really you have to go into it yourself before you realize how interesting it is, because the way that it's taught is not overwhelmingly interesting, which is sad. Right. And that, like, the number of messages and comments I get that are akin to that, Milo, is hilarious and sad. Most people are like, I hated history when I was in school. I hated English when I was in school. And now that I'm older, I love it. And yeah, why wouldn't you dislike it when you're sort of being dragged along by somebody who also doesn't seem to enjoy or care about it? You know, it ends up being... I think that that's true, Milo, and I think that the likelihood that we ever get it is probably very low. Because there's so much bureaucracy caught up in the school systems of everywhere. Everywhere in the West has so much bureaucracy. Like, they hold on to teachers who don't teach because of things like tenure. They underpay new teachers, and then sometimes they overpay new teachers, and then sometimes they'll underpay veteran teachers. It's just, the whole system is so messed up. A lot of schools are like very top heavy as far as like their administration goes. It's just, and then on top of that, you have like way too many children to each teacher. It is unfortunate. I would like to see a better school system. I would like to see a school system that focuses on fundamental skills, and school systems that focus on, like, they took phonics out of school, which is wild to me for schools that teach English. Phonics is the best tool you can use for learning English, and they took phonics out of schools. I don't understand why they did that. I'll never understand why they did it. It's a terrible choice. Dreadful choice. I hated it. Yeah, well, and then again, Hank, like that, the thing that I hear from people more than anything is how much they hated language classes and how much they hated history, and how just coming into our little tavern has brought them this sort of like new love for history and language. See, look, there it is. Now you guys can see stuff from the from TikTok in the mixed chat now as well. I did get it to work. Fun. Now everything is, but Facebook still has to come over here because this tool does not incorporate Facebook. I had one history class that I enjoyed. It was an elective and it was military history. And it helped that it was taught by a Vietnam combat vet. That would help. That would be... Shockwave, the mad scientist, thank you for the follow over on TikTok. You have marked the tavern on your map. You should be able to find your way back. the next time you seek a story. Welcome in, my friend. Actually, phonic learning is how they teach our kindergarten and grade 1 classes. And it should be that a lot of the schools in the United States don't use it anymore, but like it should be that all the way up to like 2nd or 3rd grade, because there is not a better tool for learning English than phonics. There's also school administrations that need. I agree, and one of the big things is that schools have to be apolitical. You end up getting children who get caught up in these political fights, and that's not where children belong. I mean, if college students want to get involved in that, fine, but there's way too much politics in school. Children need to be learning fundamentals before they are bombarded with doctrines and dogmas. That's just the reality of it. I homeschool my kids, read to them since they were babies, and do Hooked on Phonics. They're 7 and they're reading. See, that's wonderful. There's no reason with the tools that we have that children should be getting to 10, 15, 16 years old and not being able to read. Most of the schools I went to treated students with learning disabilities as distractions when they would ask questions. And that's another issue, is like most of what schools classify as learning disabilities is really you're sitting children who have too much energy down and then getting mad at them for being bored. I will be honest, I don't know what grade 2 English path looks like. My kids start French immersion in grade 2. So 2nd grade in America is like basic arithmetic and fundamentals of like spelling and writing. Not a whole lot of language, because they don't do a whole lot of second language stuff in the US. They should, but they don't. Melody says hi. We'll tell Melody that Una and I say hello as well. Agreed. My dad was a teacher, and he says the management of the school was management. I worked in academia out here in California for 6 years while I was running my second company that failed. And I never went to a school that was run well. I worked in high schools, some elementary schools, and I worked in colleges. There's not a single university or high school or elementary school in the US that was run well. In California, anywhere in LA County, there's not a single one of these schools. They had brand new teachers that had classrooms with 45 students in them in high schools, which was insane. There's no way that anything productive is happening there. Teacher's kid twice over, so I grew up with the good and evil of public schools. Yeah, and I think that like public schooling is a great thing, and it's grand that it is available. But it has to be handled with such care, and it's more often used as a tool or a weapon in like I said, in politics or in fiscal policy, and the children just kind of end up being a side note in the whole thing, which is just tragic. Sorry, grade 2 English. They'll cover all other subjects. They just do it in French. Oh, I see. It's funny when like the talk show host goes into the crowd to ask history questions, people don't answer it because they don't know it. Yeah, it is. There are so many videos on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and all these places of people asking simple questions like, how many states are there in the United States? What's the capital of America? What is the country directly north of America? What is the country that is directly north of Mexico? You know, there are so many of these things. I had somebody get mad at me that I called the United States America. And this was a European. I had a European who got mad at me for calling America America. And when I came back I was like, well, what do we, because their argument was there are other countries in the Americas, that's very true. But what do we call people who are from Canada? We call them Canadians. What do we call people who are from Mexico? We call them Mexicans. We don't call people from the United States of America USAians or Statesians. We call them Americans. So getting upset for me calling the United States of America, America, which it is colloquially known as everywhere, is such a weird thing for somebody to get upset about. That's babysitting when class sizes are that large, the kids can't learn and the teachers can't affect. Exactly. If you want an effective classroom, it can't be more than 15 children. And the classes need to be an hour long, and they need to have something tactile to them until you're in high school. You can have lecture classes in high school, but elementary schools should not have lecture classes. The elementary school I was in had 45 students total between 2 classrooms, K1 and 2 in one room, 3, 4, and 5 in another. Gosh. That's still a lot. Good God. I've seen a lot of POV, you're losing your mind because your kids are on summer break. And while I can appreciate the humor because we all reach our limits, I always get a bit sad at that notion. It is sad. It is a sad thing. It is a sad thing to say. Because, you know, it's not like your children chose to be here. Once you have children, they're your responsibility. It's your job to raise them and teach them and foster them. And if you're not willing to raise them and teach them and foster them, then you shouldn't be performing the activity that has children. Children are such a responsibility that I think that the cavalierness around just sleeping with anybody who will sleep with you really starts to discount, like, you have sex to have children, like that's what it's there for. And then people will just be very cavalier about it and have kids because that's what you're supposed to do, or have kids on accident. And then treat the children like a burden. No, you're a burden to the child if you are not acting like a parent. You are becoming the child's burden if you're not fulfilling your role as a parent. It is sad. I think it's the lack of structure, though. My kids drive me batty every day, but they're still some of my favorite humans. Well, and again, like it is fine as a parent to want a break, especially if you have quite a few kids. Like if you have more than 3 children, having quite a few kids, wanting a break is fair. It's absolutely fair. I keep mine home for all the reasons you mentioned. Plus, they like to separate twins a lot, and I didn't think it'd go well. Plus, they're really ADHD, and my husband and I would just be called to get them anyways. I get called almost daily for one of my kids. Yeah, and I think that the rise of ADHD, obviously a lot of this is stimulation, and a lot of the research around ADHD shows that like children are being being given too many stimulants and not being given enough stimulation. And it ends up being like they're not being challenged, they're not being given enough to do, they're not getting all of their energy out because they're being stimulated by things like blue screens, and then they're also being stimulated by sugars, and they're being stimulated by caffeine and starches and things that create sugar in the body. So children are just pumped full of stimulants, but then given no stimulation, nowhere to let all that energy out. And then they're also being given the dopamine hits of like social media and scrolling. So you have all of these things that are contributing to children being given the least good chance of succeeding in paying attention, and then punishing them for not paying attention. Like you're setting them up for failure in the paying attention Olympics, and then getting mad at them when they fail. It was a 2-room rural schoolhouse. There were teachers for each grade. Oh, I see what you're saying. So it wasn't just one teacher to each room. It was one teacher to each grade, and they were split up by room. That makes more sense, Tyson. That's better. That is a better way of doing it. I'd imagine that it was a little bit distracting with all of that, but I call it the everybody loves Raymond effect. It's funny and expected for people to mock and be annoyed by the family you chose to have. Yeah. It's one of the things, like, I have a couple of story times that I have not done yet, because they deal with Like for instance, okay, I have a skit story time that I haven't shot yet because I need somebody else to be in it because the one character is complaining that they do all sorts of things for another person. Castle's going to offend people again. Constantly do it. I just put up a joke about France, so I already offended people for today. It's not really not really a rarity at this point. But the one character is talking about how they do all sorts of things for this other person. And the other person is never grateful. The other person never says thank you. The other person never appreciates it. And then I say to them, well, did you do it because you wanted to be appreciated? Did you do it because you wanted to thank you? Well, no, but it would be nice to be thanked every now and again. Well, no, but I wish that they would just appreciate what I do. Like, okay, well then you're doing that thing because you want to be appreciated. You're not doing that thing just because you wanted to be kind and do it. You're not doing it because it's something that you wanted to do. You're doing it because there's an invoice involved. You wanted to be appreciated for the thing that you did. That's why you did it. You didn't do it to be selfish. You did it because you wanted somebody to appreciate you. As part French person, I jeer at you in overly phlegmy offended French sounds. The number of people who comment French sounds underneath my stories now is hilarious to me. I might go so far as to make a French sounds shirt. But I can't sell anything with French on it, so I don't know. We'll see what happens. I volunteer to be the second person, lol, and if I do it, it will not. Win will not be offended if you don't like it. I'll see if it's something that we can work out, Milu. The big issue is like the continuity of it. But I don't do that skit because the only person who I could be. Oh, if I do it wrong. I see. The only reason why I don't do that skit is because I would be talking about my wife. And French noises. Thank you, Bear. And I don't have those complaints about her. Like I don't make the ball and chain jokes. I don't talk about my wife as though she's a burden. I don't talk about her as though she's annoying. I don't joke about getting a divorce. I don't joke about any of these things because I don't find them funny. I don't think that you should joke about your family that way. Now, I joke with the boy a lot, and that's because he's an old curmudgeon. Like, the boy is basically like a 90-year-old man who walks around complaining about how he's sore and how he's sick of those darn kids playing on his lawn and whatnot. Which is hilarious. He's a 16-year-old going on 90, but with the maturity of a 7-year-old. Oh, he's like Walter from Jeff Dunham. More or less. And see, the problem is, like, the boy is so smart. He's such a smart young man. He's a handsome kid. But he has two major issues. The two major issues is one, he cannot admit when he is wrong. And two, he has a massive lying and self-deprecating streak. Like I don't know why he's able to do it as easily as he is, but he'll look me and his mother right in the eyes and just bold-faced lie about nothing, and it's because he's gotten away with it for so long because of other members of his family that he just does it as much as he thinks. But then he's also the best at everything, but also everyone is picking on him, sort of thing. And I had a conversation with him a while back. I'm like, dude, these two worldviews. You cannot be a badass and also everybody's picking on you. Those two worldviews don't live together. Those two things cannot live on top of one another. You either are a badass or everyone's picking on you. Those two worlds, they can't overlay on top of one another. They don't fit. You can't have those two things in your head. And the reason why you're miserable all the time, the reason why you're always sad, is because you think you're so cool, but then you also think everybody's picking on you. Yeah, it is too fun not to poke at him. Why are the smart ones like that? It's because intelligent people tend to one, over-assess, and then also overestimate themselves quite a lot. The cognitive dissonance intensifies, right? Omelette du fromage! Yes, oui. Those are the only French words that I will say. One, because of Dexter, and two, because of oui sounds. It's funny. I often joke that I tell the bear cubs, I'm always right unless your mother is, right? Well, and when Everett is being difficult, I tell him, like, look, go ask your mom. If she agrees with me, then the answer is yes. Or no, whatever she's agreeing. And if she doesn't agree with me, then the answer is no. Why do those thoughts do that? My oldest is like that. It's so tough. I honestly, it is a thing where until children experience failure, because of the way that society is structured and the way that media is structured, you get children who feel like they're bulletproof, because children already think they're bulletproof. But then you also have like this trump up of media with like all of these unstoppable heroes and all of these kids that like go out and do adult things that are entirely unrealistic. And this is what children absorb in their minds. Like, you don't have things like I'm trying to think of something from back in the day. Like, you don't have things like cartoons from the 90s. You had children that would go out and do things, but they were doing children things, right? Like, you had like rocket power and all of these other things, but then you get into the 2000s and later on, and you've got stories like Ben 10 and Johnny Test, and these are stories about kids that are they're basically just adults just shrunk down. And so kids are absorbing this, and they see themselves in these Phineas and Ferb. As much as I love Phineas and Ferb are just two adults shrunk down. Phineas and Ferb is a great series. It's very intelligent. It's something you should let your children watch. But kids aren't kids in media anymore. So kids are watching other kids their age, and they get this trumped up idea in their head of who they are. But then they also have to deal with the fact that they are woefully inadequate. Children are woefully incapable. So these two realities are clashing in their head. They have their self-image that's clashing with the real image of who they are. And so they get upset, they get depressed, they get sad about it, because the world is telling them this is what kids are, but then reality is telling them this is what kids are. So these two things grind and bang against each other, and it makes children sad. And that's why we have this massive problem with children, especially teenagers, being sad, and that's because they've had all of this time with the internet and movies and TV and video games telling them that they're superpowered and they're very capable, and that average teenagers can do these crazy things, and it's butting against the reality of they're not very capable, and unless they build skills, unless they build strength, they're not going to be. And it's a weird place for kids to be in. We've never had an era where kids have had to deal with these things. Because when kids were growing up in the 50s and 60s and 70s, their heroes, like you had like Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, right, in the 50s and 60s, and these were kids, but they were capable of kid things. And they often had to get help from adults. Same thing with like the Little Rascals and all of that. Who they looked up to were the adults. They looked up to Superman and Spider-Man and Batman and all of these things. I had to ban my eldest from watching The Simpsons because he modeled Bart to the point it was getting... Right, and that's what I mean, Bear, is that you get this in children all the time, where they're watching these figures and these characters, and there's no line drawn between adults and children anymore. And it ends up being a major issue for the mentality of children, because as a child, you're not capable of much. And so they're going to grind against these conflicting realities. who they think they are in their mind versus who they really are in reality. And a lot of modern society tries to tell children that they can be whatever they want to be, and they are whatever they want to be. And that whatever is in their head is true, and that's just not the case. And it creates very sad children. Wealth World, thank you for the follow over on Twitch, my friend. You have marked the tavern on your map. You should be able to find your way back the next time you seek a story. Oh, good lord, it's gotten late. I have to get going. When I was in 3rd grade, my mom told my teacher thought I had ADHD and I wasn't paying attention and that I should get tested. Then a month later, saying that they wanted me to skip ahead. So we went and had me tested, and I scored Mensa on the IQ test. Yeah, and we won't even let my kids watch The Simpsons, even though their friends do. Well, that's the thing, is like, the boy's father lets him watch like Futurama and South Park and Family Guy and all of these things, and I don't like children watching these things because they create a really bad precedence for how children act towards other people. Children are sponges. Like, especially up to 7 years old, children are basically like pre-programmed USB drives. They're being programmed, and their brains spend a lot of time in what is called a theta state. They're absorbing information around them, and then they mirror it back. So whatever your children are watching on TV, is likely what they're going to mirror back. What they're watching on YouTube, what they're watching anywhere is what they will mirror back, because their brain is absorbing and then mirroring. Right, and Tyson, that happens to a lot of kids. A lot of kids end up getting sequestered because they're bored, they're not stimulated enough. Again, they're being given all of these stimulants, but they're not stimulated enough. And then they get bored, and then they get sad. It's such a... My future kids will get the One Punch Man trading sequence, in a sense, I mean. I jumped across prairies to get here now. I forgot how much bigger storms sound here. All right, my friends. I'm not going to have time to do songs tonight. We waffled for a bit too long. Ishwa, hello. Sagon, welcome in. So very glad you could join us. I was forced to do an ASD exam when I was 18. It was to ignore CPTSD and supersede ADHD, non-consensual stuff aside. Right. Well, and one of my big issues, like, if you have problems, you should get them tested, you should get them taken care of. Modern society jumps far too quickly to diagnose a thing and label it, rather than to try to fix organically what is wrong. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody for this. I'm not pointing fingers at anyone saying that anyone is a particular thing. But society is so quick to grab a thing, diagnose it, and label it so that it can be treated a certain way. Like, I worked with a lot of troubled kids what they call troubled kids when I was working in academia. I worked with a lot of kids that were in disaffected areas, poorer areas, gang areas. I worked with 11, 12, 13-year-old kids that were in gangs. I also worked with a lot of kids who had behavioral disorders like ADD and ADHD, and kids who had Down syndrome and a lot of things in these schools. And one of the things that I observed more than anything is that these children were given a label, they were expected to act a certain way, and then they acted that way with impunity. But then when you had people like myself and other teachers who would come in and who would not allow them to act that way, 9.5 times out of 10, they stopped acting that way. When they had expectations put upon them, and then they were held to a standard, 9.5 times out of 10, sometimes you had kids who just behaviorally, they were really, really far gone, and they needed more attention, more time, more structure. But the vast majority of the time, in my experience, again, I'm not trying to say that this is everywhere, but in my experience working with hundreds of kids given structure almost always almost always behaved better than children who were allowed to act with impunity. It's an insane thing. Insane thing. They are. I have an autoimmune illness, and screens became a babysitter, which I never wanted to do. Now I have to undo and block so much. Worth it though. Right. Here we've got a metal roof, so the rain is real loud. I love rain on a metal. I agree with Baird. I love rain on a metal roof. I love the sound of rain on a metal roof, or even like those fiberglass roofs, or rain on plexiglass. I love that sound. I wanted to be a paleontologist because I watched a lot of dinosaur shows. I eat Jurassic Park, Land Before Time, science shows about dinosaurs. Yeah, see, this is the other thing is that a lot of kids will express interest in things, and then now obviously you have to make children learn fundamentals. Like you can't expect children to want to learn fundamentals. Fundamentals are uncomfortable. You have to force children to learn fundamentals, but then also let them explore other things. I know it makes me sleepy. I mean, it makes me sleepy too, but I like it. The foster care system likes to label trauma survivors as autistic. I'm not saying there aren't those in the system. Well, that's what I mean, is that people are so quick to label a thing, like diagnose and label a thing, rather than figure out what the behavior is, and figure out what's causing it, without the labels. Because labeling can be useful, but not the way we do it today. Like, the label becomes the whole point. And that's just such a dreadful thing. It's like people treat labels like they're the most important thing in the world, when it is the fundament behind the label that matters. Like, I don't give a damn that you're a scholar if you've never studied anything. Like, you can have a degree from Harvard, but you can be a total moron. I don't care that you have a degree from Harvard if you're an idiot. It's the same thing, like, I don't care if you're a doctor. If 98% of your patients die, I don't care that you're a doctor. I don't care that you have a driver's license. If you drive like garbage, I'm not going to drive with you. The fundament, the substance behind the thing is more important than the name of the thing. And it always will be. Rain, love it. The thunder in the prairies echoes forever, and I swear it's like... I was in a thunderstorm in Nebraska one time, and it was one of the most beautiful and loud thunderstorms I've ever been in. Nebraska is very flat. Like, Nebraska is one of the flatter states in the United States, and it's absolutely beautiful. Degrees are just fancy pieces of paper, in many cases. Like, I do respect people who... Because, like, I went all the way up to a bachelor's level. I never finished my degree, but I went to a bachelor's level of education and was headed towards a master's. And I dropped out of it because I didn't like the ethos of academia. But we're so quick to put on these labels. And I should stop talking before I get too far into this, because I know I'm going to upset people with this, but... It's just, Gaster, thank you kindly for the follow. You've marked us on your map. You should be able to find your way back the next time you seek a story. Well, and again, like, I kind of freaked out the one time my doctor told me he was a C student. And that's what I mean. Like, I care way more about what you've accomplished than what you say you've accomplished. Like, you can get a piece of paper for anything, right? Like, I have a chiropractor who has helped me with, like, physically getting better and physical therapy, because the chiropractor actually knows about physical therapy and the human body. I have a friend who was put into a wheelchair because of a bad chiropractor, and has lived in a wheelchair for the rest of his life because of a chiropractor. Some brilliant people can be really bad at school, and that too. Like, obviously you have to account, like, schools cannot be super specialized in general. Like, public schools cannot be hyper specialized. They have to be generalized in order to be functional. But there should be systems within society in general that allow for children to learn fundamentals while also being funneled towards utilizing their brilliance, utilizing the things that they have interest in and that they are good at. And we lose a lot of brilliant people to the system that way. I was told I tested college level at 14. I chose to go at 17. Found out later I had ADHD and likely was on the spectrum, and I wonder what labels would have done as a kid. Could have gone either way. Yeah. I mean, I was told I was told, my grandfather was told and my mother was told that I had attention problems when I was young. My grandfather solved those attention problems by smacking me. And while I'm not going to say that that's the best way to do it, I was afraid of getting smacked, so I sat down and I focused until I was done. Is that the best way to do it? No. But that's what worked for me. It's what worked for my grandfather. I graduated high school at 13 and I went to university at 14, and I was in university from 14 all the way until I was 23 years old, almost 10 years. And then I worked in the schools for another 3 years after that. My last foster mom once told me I'd amount to nothing. My social worker at the time agreed with her. Sort of BS choice. Yeah, and there's no reason why adults should be saying that to children ever. Because it's a cowardly thing for adults to say. My spine surgery got screwed up. Yeah, Bear. That's another point on the graph. Like, I don't particularly care what people say they're capable of. I want to see evidence of what you're capable of. And a degree can be evidence of that. But if you do nothing after the degree, chances are the degree is a vanity thing. It's not evidence of capability, it's a vanity metric. I believe that the kids are good athletes, are penalized because they have bad grades. That can happen. I think that one of the big issues is that you have two extremes. Sometimes good athletes are then given passes to be poor in academics so they can be athletes, which is not good, because only a small number of athletes go on to be pro athletes that can live off of their abilities. The secondary is that some athletes are penalized for being not particularly intelligent, but just being average students, and you have to find a happy medium somewhere. Sounds like horrible people. Who are we talking about, Clifford? I've gone on a lot of topics this way. It's just a pretty piece of paper. Yeah, absolutely. Because of it, I feel mostly useless. Nah, Baird, you've got tons that you still offer us all. Sorry, just have so many grievances with the foster care system. I have 5 godchildren who were all in the foster care system. None of them were done well by the foster care system. Well, yeah, all bureaucrats are perfect humans. That's why they're bureaucrats. That's how you get to be perfect, is become a bureaucrat. Then you can put up all the red tape that keeps people from understanding why. In middle school and high school, you had to carry a certain GPA to maintain eligibility to play sports, which I think is fair. But I do think that there also needs to be a balance, because they also force students who are in sports, they force them to train a lot. You have to make sure there's a good balance there. The foster parents, yeah, absolutely, Clifford, I agree with you. When I was 6, my teacher told me I would never have nice handwriting, and my father wouldn't let that pass. You do have to be realistic with children, but being realistic with children does not mean telling them that they can't do things. You need to let children know that they have limitations and to be careful. But until a child proves that they are incapable of something, you don't need to be shooting anything down. I know, Bear, and I'm not saying I know as in I know exactly what you're going through. I know that your whole life you've been a very physically capable man, and now you're dealing with your body not being able to keep up with your mind anymore. Your body is in pain, and it's not as strong as it once was. It's not as capable as it once was. But I look at it from the perspective of the way that our ancestors have always done things. You have a wealth of experience. You have a wealth of energy and personality. And while a lot of that ends up being overshadowed by your pain and by your struggles, I don't think that the pain and struggles need to define who you are. Because I think that you are a much greater man than the pain and struggles that have been thrust upon you. And I know that it crushes down on you because it wasn't your choice. It wasn't something that you got to choose that caused these things. But it's the hand that you were dealt, and now you have to figure out how are you going to live with those things, because it's the only things that can change are the decisions that you make each day to manage and improve what pain you have, and then manage and direct the energy that you have given the circumstance that you're in. And again, I know these things are easier said than done. I have had chronic nerve damage since I was 12 years old, and I have no sensation. Like my body, I have no surface sensation in any of my skin. And I get these nerve flares where it feels like something's broken. Like I'll get something in a joint or on a bone where it feels like I broke something. And occasionally, because my nervous system doesn't work right, I'll get cramps so bad that they risk dislocating or breaking my bones. And I don't like that that's how bad my body is degraded over time, and it's only going to get worse as I get older. But I also can't let those things be all that I am. And maybe that's just me being haughty and selfish, maybe, I've been being told since I was 13, 14 years old that I wasn't going to live past 18 because of my heart condition and because my liver doesn't function right. And, I've lived significantly beyond what the expectations were. And the reality is that I could go at any time because of these things. But I can't live in fear, and I can't live with those things defining me because I don't want to. I don't want my life to be defined by the pains and the struggles that I've gone through. I want them to be defined by the things that I do and the things that I make. And what I end up leaving behind, whether that is a happy family, or stories for all of you, or if I ever get a chance to actually open the tavern's physical doors again and help to keep alive the handcrafts and arts and whatnot, I will be privileged to do those things. But I will always advocate for, no matter how much pain you're in, no matter how much you feel like suffering has become all you are, it doesn't have to be. And that doesn't mean you deny that you're suffering. It doesn't mean you deny that you're in pain. But you have to get to a point where you become friends with the struggle and understand that it's going to come along with you. Occasionally it's going to interrupt you, and occasionally it's going to circumvent what you wanted. I've had plenty of days where that was the case. But it's not in charge, you are. And you're always going to be in charge. Occasionally it's going to slow you down, and some days it might even stop you. But you're always going to be the one who makes the decision to stand back up, to keep walking, to keep thriving in spite of and in light of what you've gone through. Because a lot of times you don't get to choose what happens to you. There's a whole chaotic world around you, and you don't get to choose what happens to you. But you do get to choose what you do with what is handed to you. And sometimes the hand you get dealt is shite. And it's just nothing but shite. But if you spread it out, shite can be fertilizer, and you can grow something in it. And it's not fun to start with. It's not enjoyable. No, and I don't think that you have, Bear. I don't think you have. I think it's an important conversation. And to me, this is a happy conversation. I think that learning to deal with the worst parts of life is a happy thing. I don't think that it is a sad thing. Like Milu obviously has gone through one of the hardest things that a human being can go through, dealing with cancer. Right? I think the only thing that would be harder than dealing with cancer in yourself is dealing with it in a child. Right? And that's my perspective. Obviously, I've never had cancer, so I don't know. But from the people who I know who have, and I have a very dear friend whose daughter, at the age of 3 or 4 years old, had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and she's in recovery now, but she's gone through a very, very painful way. But I think that it is a very happy thing to learn to deal with the worst parts of life, the hardest parts of life. Because being able to come out of struggle and not be jaded and not be defined by the struggle, but rather lifted up by it, I think is one of the more beautiful things about human tenacity, is that we can become greater and stronger on the back of weakness and pain because we're able to learn from it and evolve alongside it. So I will always stand on the hill that pain and suffering can lead to good things if we are willing to let it, and we are willing to not let ourselves be defined by it and controlled by it. And yeah, you're gonna have days where what Milu said, I still have days where I pity party and then I put myself together and keep going. You're still gonna have days, like I have some days where I wake up and every joint in my body hurts. And there's no reason for it. No reason for it. Every joint in my body hurts. And I'll feel like I'm 90 or 100 years old. And I feel sorry for myself for a little bit, and I'll even wind the lady. But then you just got to get up and keep going. Because you're going until you're done. That's really it. Jared, hello, my friend. It's good to see you. It has been a minute. I'm glad that you caught us, because I was supposed to hop off 20 minutes ago. That sounds very painful. Makes so much sense that you feel that way. I hope you can open them again. I almost died having my twins. They activate a rare blood disease that causes hemorrhaging and scary stuff like cancer scares I get checked for. It's not always easy, but I deeply agree with you. I appreciate that, Nico. I don't mean to impose my worldview on anybody. Like, if you don't agree and you feel like I've romanticized these things a bit too much, I understand. This is the way that I walk through the world. I don't expect everybody to walk with me. Heated electric blankets help me on those days. One of the issues with when I have pain is that it's not actual pain, it's nerve flare-ups. So I'm not actually in pain, like nothing's broken. It's just my brain and my nervous system don't communicate anymore. So my body will be saying, oh, there's pain happening, but there's nothing, I'm not in pain, there's no pain there. So it's just, it's an odd thing. Been working a lot. Well, that's good. Working a lot in this economy is a blessing, Jared. Even if you don't enjoy your job, working a lot in this economy is a blessing. Hell yeah, congratulations. Again, when the economy is down, even if it's not necessarily a good job, working is a blessing. And yeah, I agree with Milo. We're glad that you're still here and that you made it through all that. Because that is scary. Those are things. The lady and I are both getting older. We both want to have more children. But because of... I lost my business in 2020. And the lady lost a project that she was working on in 2021. And because both of us ended up very much in debt, and we had a lot of issues that stemmed from it. And I want to make it clear, I'm not saying any of these things is a pity party. I don't want anybody to feel sorry for us. We do all right. We live the life that we intend to live, and we do pretty well for ourselves. The lady and I very much would like to have one or two more children, because obviously my stepson is not he's not my blood child. He's very much my child, but he's not my blood child. And the both of us would like to have one or two more children before we get too old, but both of us are reaching the point where it's probably not safe to do so. And if we can't get to a point where we are more stable and able to handle children in the next year, it's probably not a good idea for us to even try. And that's sad for me and it's sad for her, but we can either, be sad about it, or we can carry on and we'll be the parents of the internet. We'll have all of the wayward children who come into the tavern, and I'll pass on my stories and knowledge to all of you, and you can pass them on to your children. Since I won't have any of my own, and it's one of those things where, again, like you're gonna have your struggles, you're gonna have things that are dreadful, and one of the things that scares me the most is like what Neko said she went through. It terrifies me to think that she would ever go through something like that, because she had a hard time with Everett. She had a very hard time with Everett, and I would hate for anything to happen to her, for us to take an unnecessary risk. I mean, you're like family to me, Castle, both you and her. I'm sure Matty would happily be adopted by the two of you. I'm sure. Man, I'm sorry, Jared. You came in like we were mucking about earlier, and then we started talking about the education system, and it kind of got to here. And like I said, I was supposed to hop off 20, almost 30 minutes ago now. But yeah, I think that you should always be cognizant of your struggles. You should always work to understand. Good evening, Susan. Thank you for the heart, me. Tips to the tavern keeper always appreciated. Just don't ever let your pains or struggles or sufferings define you. Is all I'll say. They have a very powerful influence because pain is such an immediate thing. But coming back to Bear, like Bear is a good man. He's a great man. He's a very strong man. He's a very family-oriented man. And I watched my own father lose. My own father was very intelligent. He's in the top 3% of intelligent people. The man helped put the first civilians into space. And he was very intelligent, but he was not a very smart man. He was not a very shrewd man. And then he ended up with having a stroke and Alzheimer's. And in his stroke, he was paralyzed completely on his right side. And I watched how badly he suffered, losing, because he was 6'6", 270 pounds, very domineering man, very physically domineering. And watching him lose that aspect of himself, he never recovered from it. He never recovered from being the physically capable man, because it was so much of who he was. And I wish that I had been a little bit older and wiser before he got sick. Because maybe I might have been able to help him not feel so inadequate. Which my mother contributed a lot to that. My mother was very cruel to my father, and my father was very cruel to my mother. They were not a healthy couple. I hope you guys can. My husband and I both have things that meant we might have needed to adopt or not have any. Then the most determined and stubborn kids made it here. Either way, I hope the best for you. Well, thank you, Neko. I appreciate that. Yeah, the big thing is that right now we're both still dealing with a lot of financial issues, and we have a lot of family things. Because I took on a lot of debt when my business failed during COVID. I ended up almost $180,000 in debt after COVID because I had a business. That business functioned around uh, events. We did media for events. And obviously, for 2 years, there were no events. So I lost a lot of contracts, I lost a lot of clients, I lost a lot of everything. I lost a house, I lost a vehicle. I'm not the only one. A lot of people lost things during the lockdowns. And and then the lady also ended up losing a project that she was working on, and that cost us quite a bit. So we've been working to responsibly come back and take care of the child that we have, make sure that he's getting a good education and whatnot. And doing what we do is difficult because we've decided to do this where we write and tell and preserve stories as our work. And it's difficult. But it's a difficulty that we chose. So I don't expect anybody to feel sorry for us over it, because it's a difficulty that we chose. But regardless, we have to work through and figure things out. I mean, even Ree checked in on me. I think I'm the tavern's child. You're practically one of the goblins, Matty. Uncle Bear is the best bear. I see the tavern as family. Everyone has helped me get where I am at the shop. I use this time to clear my mind, especially during my training blocks, which I love that so many of you do, Tyson. I had to leave work early as I have asthma and the Canada smoke hit the warehouse. Yeah, by the way, all of our Canadian friends, make sure you're being safe with all those fires that are burning. I don't know exactly where they are, but I know that there have been some pretty nasty fires burning out there in Canada, so just be careful. My first impressions of you has been quite the conversation. Have a great night. Shalon. Well, Sagon, I'm sorry that this is when you came in. Normally we have a much more light-hearted discussions. This one just ended up being kind of a deep one. These do happen occasionally, but usually we're a little bit more light-hearted. But I appreciate you for coming in. Thank you for spending time in the tavern. Rest well, and may you rise tomorrow, ready to face the day. Shalon Gafol, my friend. I know that feeling your father went through, and yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard for him. I nearly lost my life during the lockdown. Yeah, I'm driving through it tomorrow. Be careful, Milu. Be careful. What you and Una do for us all, do for all of us is loved and appreciated. Yeah, I'm glad, Bear, and I'm glad because so many people from so many different places love these things. And like the difference between Matty, Bear, and Milu and Tyson, like you guys are from totally different parts of the world with totally different backgrounds, and the fact that so many folk come in and find commonality here, it fills my heart. It really does. My book that I wrote, I wouldn't have been written without the tavern, and you and the lady gave me the tools I needed. I'm glad to hear it, Matty. Melody is watching Toy Story 4 for bedtime, but it's almost over, so I'm going to get settled in a bit. I need to get off too because I have things I have to finish before midnight. So, my friends, I'm sorry to leave on such a somber note. I may set up my car phone holder and record if it's safe to set up. Yeah, please do. We went on a major waffling tonight. I think I need to just set up a night where we play something casual, like a story game or something where I can waffle with you all, because we end up getting too far into waffles during story time. We don't get enough stories read. I'm just a chatty goblin. I walked in one day and Destiny tied me to the chair. Or you tied yourself to a chair and blamed it on Destiny. We needed a good waffle night. Yeah, apparently we had it. We had it. Librarian play. I've seen that game. I would lose my mind. The lady loves stuff like that. I can't stand it. you know how some of you guys play the team, the friend slot games with the lady, and you hear her swear. Me playing that game, you'd hear me swear a lot. Not a bad first impression. Well, that's good. So good. I'm glad of it. All right, friends. If you're over on Twitch, we'll try to raid out if anybody's on. But if not, this is where we're going to end for tonight. I appreciate you all for being here. Thank you so much for joining me and for being the best part of the tavern, my friends. I will be back on Tuesday. We'll be reading more Eragon. And in the meantime, I have a really fun series, I hope to be a fun series, of story times coming out this week. We're going to do a World Cup of stories, where you guys get to decide what the best stories are of like stories from different cultures. So, this is where we are going to part for tonight, my friend. So, until next time, I will bid you all stay bloodthirsty. Until then, good night, my friends. Rest well.
Near Banbridge town in the county down, one morning in July, from a bohin green I was clearly seen as I went traipsing by. He stood quite still as if struck by a chill or a vision of ancient grace, and he gazed with a stare at my nut-brown hair till the blood rushed to his face. From Bantry Bay up to Derry Quay, and from Galway to Dublin town, no lad I've seen has a look so keen as I saw here in County Down. I gave no sign as he watched the line of my shadow as I passed, but I felt the heat of his gaze so sweet, and I knew the spell was cast. He gripped his walking stick with a hand so quick as he tripped o'er his feet. For a lad so bold, he was knocked from his hold by a girl that he chanced to meet. From Bantry Bay up to Derry Quay, and from Galway to Dublin town, no lad I've met hasn't a name to set against the star of the County Down. Now they say he's gone to the harvest fair with the heart all in a knot, to ask my name and to play the game and to find my humble cot. Well, let him come and let him drum his fingers on the door. If he's half the wit as he's got the grit, I might like him a wee bit more. From